The driveway was Liam's personal testament to the life he sought, an organic, winding path of crushed pea gravel. Smooth riverstones he'd hauled himself from the local quarry and perfectly spaced. Reclaimed granite cobblestones that encouraged moss and wild thyme to root between them. It was a driveway that sighed contentedly under the sun, a warm, textured invitation into his 5 acres of wild, untouched woodland. He didn't live in this meticulously planned, agonizingly homogeneous community for the uniformity. He'd bought the dilapidated property specifically because the deed indicated the parcel was just large enough to maintain a sense of separation, a sliver of the authentic South Carolina low-country aesthetic he cherished. He'd spent 6 months renovating the house itself, a century-old cedar cottage, but the driveway, the path of transition from the manicured, dull world of the neighborhood's main road to his sanctuary, was his most personal achievement. It was a space designed for slow living, for the gentle crunch of tires over stone, not the hard, sterile slap of asphalt or poured concrete, but where Liam saw rustic charm and natural aggregate, Mrs. Vivian Sterling, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association and reigning empress of suburban conformity, saw a blight, a liability, and an unacceptable deviation from the established aesthetic standard. The first letter arrived 3 weeks after Liam had finished the final layer of gravel. It was cordial to the point of being venomous. A thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with a ludicrously ornate gold foil stamp of a willow branch. Inside, the text was printed in a formal, conservative script, detailing the initial assessment. Dear resident of 143 Azalea Lane, the Architectural Review Board, ARB, has conducted a courtesy review of your property's ingress or egress approach. While we appreciate the effort toward landscaping, the current composition of the driveway utilizing unapproved, loose aggregate and natural stone is considered non-compliant with Covenant 3.4b, which mandates all vehicular access paths be constructed of paved, durable material, specifically concrete, asphalt, or stamped paver system. Please see the attached documentation outlining approved materials. This serves as a preliminary notice of non-compliance, requesting remediation within 30 days. Liam, a man whose hands were far more adept at carving oak than navigating bureaucratic nonsense, simply laughed. He used the envelope, the ridiculously thick, high-quality paper, to start the evening's fire pit. He figured a quick phone call, maybe a neighborly chat, would clear things up. He was wrong. Mrs. Sterling was not a woman who believed in chats. She believed in minutes, motions, and fiduciary responsibility. Liam's polite, reasoned email detailing the durability of the aggregate and the superior drainage it offered was returned 3 days later, not with a reply, but with the second letter. This one, arriving 10 days after the first, was printed on a stiffer, slightly colder-hued paper. Second and formal notice of violation. File WWC 143A. Failure to communicate a plan for remediation is noted. Per Willow Creek HOA Bylaw 7.1c. A daily fine of KMATHBF $50 is now assessed, commencing on the 31st day following the preliminary notice. Remediation deadline is 10 days from the date of this letter. Failure to comply will result in automatic escalation to legal counsel and forced, contractor-executed remediation, the cost of which will be borne by the homeowner, plus a 25% administrative fee. The laughter died in Liam's throat. $50 a day was petty, but the threat of forced, contractor-executed work, a sterile slab of gray concrete laid down over his carefully curated stone, sent a genuine jolt of rage through him. It was a declaration of war on his sovereignty. He called the number on the letterhead. It went straight to a receptionist who informed him, with a tone of rehearsed glacial politeness, that all communication regarding violations must be submitted in writing. I am submitting it in writing, Liam gritted out, running a hand over the rough-hewn stone bench in his workshop. I'm submitting my intent to show up at the next meeting and tell Mrs. Sterling exactly what I think of her tyrannical little kingdom. The next general meeting is in 4 days. Sir, the receptionist drone said, all residents are welcome. Good day. The HOA meeting was held in the antiseptic, fluorescent-lit community clubhouse ballroom. Liam arrived in his work boots, smelling faintly of sawdust and varnish, a defiant contrast to the sea of beige chinos and pastel polos. He was armed with printouts, cost analyses, and photos of beautifully executed aggregate driveways from high-end design, magazines, evidence of the superior quality of his rustic design. Mrs. Sterling, Vivian, stood at a podium like a political candidate at a rally. She was a woman in her late 50s, with a helmet of perfectly coiffed silver hair, a necklace of meticulously matched pearls, and eyes that held the hard, unyielding glint of polished granite. She ran the meeting with the efficiency of a corporate board director, ticking off items about sprinkler system coverage and the new HOA-approved mailbox designs. When the agenda finally landed on unresolved violations, the air in the room seemed to compress. Item 4C, Vivian announced, her voice a precise, sharp instrument. Property 143 Azalea Lane, driveway non-compliance. Mr. O'Connell, I believe you are present? Liam stood, gripping his sheaf of papers. Yes, Mrs. Sterling. I'm here to discuss a misunderstanding regarding my driveway materials. Vivian didn't look at him. She looked slightly above his head, toward the exit sign. There is no misunderstanding, Mr. O'Connell. The covenant is unambiguous. Paved, durable material. Loose gravel is neither paved nor durable by our established definition. But the base is crushed. Stabilized limestone and the granite cobblestones are embedded in polymer cement, Liam argued, his voice shaking slightly with the effort of remaining calm. It's far more permeable and environmentally friendly than solid concrete. I brought photographic evidence of... We are not debating the merits of permeability, Mr. O'Connell. Vivian cut him off, her tone dripping with condescension. We are debating your failure to adhere to the established community-voted-upon rules. Your driveway looks frankly like an uncompleted construction site. It is too rustic, a term, I might add, that several neighbors have used to describe the unfortunate deviation you've introduced to this neighborhood's aesthetic harmony. A ripple of low, confirming murmurs spread through the audience. Liam felt his blood pressure spike. He knew who those neighbors were, the ones whose pristine lawns were maintained by loud, chemical spraying crews every Tuesday morning. With all due respect, Liam pressed, pushing aside the design magazines and holding up the cost analysis. My total cost for the materials and specialized labor was over $8,000. Your suggested asphalt replacement will cost half that and look like every other boring driveway on this street. This is not a budget issue. This is a personal aesthetic choice that actually enhances the property's value by utilizing high-quality, sustainable materials. Vivian smiled then, a small, terrifyingly controlled movement of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. O'Connell, you purchased a home governed by a covenant. Your personal aesthetic choices, however expensive, must align with the community's collective standard. They do not. Furthermore, the 10-day remediation window has expired. The current outstanding fines totals math BF, $500 $. Per bylaw 7.2a, the matter is now escalated. The board has authorized the immediate hiring of Apex Paving to execute the remediation. A contractor will arrive on your property in 3 business days. Any interference with their work will result in criminal trespassing charges. The finality in her voice crushed the remaining hope Liam had for a civil solution. He looked around the room, at the blank, impassive faces of his neighbors, the nodding approval near the front row, and realized he was alone. This wasn't about the driveway anymore. It was about power, control, and humiliating the rebel. Liam slowly lowered his papers. His hands were shaking too hard to hold them steady. You know what, Mrs. Sterling? He said, his voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the boardroom silence. You can save your contractors the trip. You want a paved driveway? Fine, I'll pave it myself. But when I'm done, you're going to wish you had just let me keep my river stones. He didn't wait for her response. He simply turned, walked out of the meeting, leaving the silence and Vivian Sterling's small, triumphant smirk behind him. Back in the dim glow of his workshop that evening, the reality set in. 3 days. $500 in fines, plus the looming threat of thousands more for the forced work and the administrative fee. He was financially cornered. He walked over to the workbench where the HOA's correspondence had accumulated. There were 6 envelopes now, each thicker and firmer than the last, smelling faintly of expensive paper and bureaucracy. He picked up the stack, not just the letters, but the full violation reports, the covenant excerpts, the payment demands, and the unapproved materials list. It was a towering monument to a petty, relentless assault. He considered shredding them all in a cathartic rage, feeding them to the wood chipper he kept for clearing brush. He started to tear the corner of the latest, most menacing legal warning. But then his fingers brushed against the material, that high-quality, thick, cream-colored paper, sealed with that utterly ridiculous gold stamp. Paved, durable material. A slow, terrifying grin spread across Liam's face. The roar of the small industrial tar mixer was the only sound that mattered in the dead of the Willow Creek night. Under the harsh, solitary floodlight attached to his workshop, Liam worked with a focused, almost meditative intensity, the exhaustion of the HOA meeting forgotten in the clarity of purpose. His anger had solidified, transforming into a methodical, determined execution plan. The HOA letters, all 6 formal notices, the 2 subsequent fine assessments, the 10 pages of covenant excerpts, and the ridiculous, gold-sealed envelopes were meticulously deconstructed. Liam used a utility knife to separate the high-rag content paper from the thick cardstock, laying the flat cream-colored sheets onto a sheet of plywood. He worked quickly, his calloused hands tearing through the paper with practiced efficiency, each rip a small, satisfying victory over the bureaucracy they represented. The gold foil from the seals was discarded. He needed material that would bind, not merely reflect. He chose cold patch asphalt, a durable, highly adhesive bituminous compound often used for road repair, which cures quickly and is designed to adhere to existing surfaces. This wasn't professional hot mix paving, but it was indisputably paved, durable material. And Liam was a master craftsman. He knew how to make things last. His original driveway, the layer of crushed limestone and pea gravel, now served as the perfect sub-base. The process was strategic. Liam first laid down a very fine layer of the cold patch mix, just enough to make the surface tacky. Then came the paper. He began placing the sheets, overlapping them like a grim mosaic of paperwork, concentrating the highest density of the stiff, official letterhead down the main tire tracks. As he pressed the paper onto the sticky asphalt base, it darkened immediately, absorbing the tar and transforming from fragile paper to a stiff, tar-impregnated membrane. It was unsettlingly effective, turning the very instruments of his torment into a durable, layered substrate. He worked his way down the 20-foot stretch of the driveway approach, ensuring every single sentence of Vivian Sterling's threats was firmly integrated into the roadbed. Failure to comply will result in automatic escalation, became the foundation for his front left tire. Unacceptable deviation from the established aesthetic standard was buried directly beneath the center of the path. When the paper layer was complete, he added the final top coat, a thin, dense blanket of the black aggregate, tamped down with a heavy professional-grade roller. He had to be precise, leaving just enough asphalt to satisfy the paved requirement, but not so much that the structural layer, the paper, would be completely invisible. He wanted a sign, a subtle texture to distinguish his pavement from the mundane concrete of his neighbors. By 4 a.m., the work was done. Liam stood back, sweat dripping from his brow, his body aching, and looked at the result. It was a black, uniform, undeniably paved surface. The transition from the public asphalt road to his private wooded sanctuary was now a seamless, dark strip. The quiet satisfaction that washed over him was deeper than any fine could touch. He had complied, but he had done so with an act of ultimate, poetic defiance. He cleaned the mixer, rolled up the tools, and retreated inside just as the first sliver of orange-gold dawn touched the humid South Carolina sky. He set an alarm for 7:30 a.m., poured himself a glass of water, and collapsed onto his sofa. ready for the confrontation he knew was inevitable. At precisely 7:12 a.m., a blindingly white Mercedes GLE, perfectly waxed and driven by Vivian Sterling, slowed to a crawl at the edge of Liam's property. She stopped, not out of caution but out of confusion. The driveway was paved. It was black, smooth, and utterly compliant with Covenant 3.4b. Vivian's initial reaction was a surge of triumphant vindication. He caved. She had broken the stubborn, rebellious newcomer and forced him into compliance. It was a validation of her power and the HOA's absolute authority. She slammed the gear shift into park and stepped out, heels clicking sharply on the public road asphalt, her power suit crisp and unforgiving. She marched onto the new pavement, her gaze sweeping over the black surface, looking for imperfections, a cheap seal, an uneven grade, anything she could immediately cite for a fresh violation. But the work was solid. Liam's skill as a craftsman was evident even in this hasty midnight job. A bit late, wouldn't you say, Mr. O'Connell? Liam stepped out onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, the picture of weary calm. The cool, damp air of the morning was thick with the faint, lingering scent of fresh bitumen. "Not late at all, Mrs. Sterling," Liam replied, his voice calm. "The deadline was 3 business days, if I recall. Apex paving wasn't scheduled until tomorrow. I beat them to it." Vivian crossed her arms, a diamond bracelet flashing in the sun. "It's a slapdash job. I'm quite certain it won't hold up to the summer heat. We will be performing inspections daily. I assume you use standard asphalt aggregate?" "Paved, durable material, Mrs. Sterling," Liam confirmed, taking a slow sip of coffee. "And the composition meets the standard set forth in your second notice of violation. It is laid, it is bound, and it is a solid surface. As for the base material, well, that's where things get interesting. The base material must be gravel or crushed stone suitable for load-bearing," Vivian recited from memory, her eyes narrowing. "Don't play games with me, Mr. O'Connell. What is this garbage?" She bent down, inspecting the edge where the roller had pressed the material tight against the bordering grass. As she scrutinized the surface, the morning sun, now higher and warmer, began to work its magic. The thin layer of the cold patch asphalt, which had been spread meticulously thin to keep the cost down and the core structure intact, began to allow the surface layer to settle. The dense, high-rag content paper, having absorbed the tar and compressed, was creating a unique subsurface texture. Vivian gasped, drawing back slightly. Where the asphalt was thinnest, particularly along a seam near the center, a faint, mottled pattern was becoming visible. It was a slight ripple, the ghost of an underlying structure that was unnervingly geometric. She touched the spot with the toe of her shoe, then bent closer, squinting. "What is that texture?" she demanded, the controlled veneer of her anger starting to crack. "It looks laminated. What exactly did you embed in the stone base to stabilize it?" Liam smiled, a genuine, unsettling smile. That would be the paperwork, Mrs. Sterling, all of it. Every letter, every violation notice, every fine assessment, the full covenant breakdown, even the memo detailing the 25% administrative fee. I used the official correspondence from the Willow Creek Homeowners Association as the fibrous, stabilizing underlayer for the asphalt top coat. Vivian straightened as if she'd been struck. Her face, usually so composed, went bone white beneath her light makeup. Her pearls seemed to constrict around her throat. You cannot be serious," she whispered, the force of her voice momentarily gone. "That is highly irregular." That is trash!" "No, Mrs. Sterling, that is your paper," Liam corrected her, his eyes cold and hard. "It's high-quality, dense paper, as you know. When saturated with the binder and compacted, it adds an incredible layer of tensile strength to the foundation, preventing cracking better than cheap gravel. I checked the covenant thoroughly multiple times. It specifies the surface material, paved, durable, which I have provided. It does not stipulate against using existing administrative documents for the subbase." Vivian took 2 furious steps toward him, her hands clenched. "This is vandalism. This is deliberate mockery. You will rip this entire disaster out by the end of the day, or I will have the sheriff's department serve you with a restraining order and a 6-figure lawsuit." "You will rip out your own paperwork, Madam President?" Liam challenged, his voice rising slightly. echoing in the quiet morning air. I have complied with the letter of the law. You asked for paved, durable material, and I have provided the most durable material I could find, the physical evidence of your own authority. And if you try to rip it out, you will be committing a crime against my property, which is now a fully complaint-paved driveway. He took another slow sip of coffee, letting his words hang heavy in the air. Vivian's eyes darted wildly, from Liam's face, to her white Mercedes, to the driveway itself, a sheet of black obedience that was secretly a monument to her defeat. The fines, the entire history of their petty conflict, were literally cemented under her feet. She spun on her heel, her breath coming in ragged gasps, and stalked back to her car. As she drove away, tires rolling over the foundation of her own legal threats, a truly terrifying thing happened. The heat of the morning sun had caused the thin asphalt layer to cure further, and now, along the length of the driveway, the slight impression of the underlying letters had become starkly clear. Under the harsh morning light, the faint, shimmering texture of a preliminary notice of non-compliance was perfectly embossed into the newly paved surface, a permanent, physical record of the HOA's failure, forever marking the path to Liam's defiant home. Vivian Sterling did not do things in halves. Her rage, bottled and chilled to an icy hardness, was immediately channeled into procedural warfare. By 10 a.m., the HOA's retained counsel, the firm of Blackwood and Finch, had sent Liam a scathing, 7-page legal demand via certified courier and email. The document didn't waste time on flowery language. It went straight for the jugular. It claimed not only egregious non-compliance, but also deliberate nuisance and emotional distress, attempting to leverage Liam's act of defiance into a massive liability. The outstanding fine of $500 was now retroactively inflated with two new, punitive fees, a $2,000 deliberate vandalism fee and a $5,000 disruption of aesthetic harmony fee. Liam now owed $7,500 within 48 hours. Or the HOA would immediately file an injunction, seize the property to perform the forced remediation, and place a lien covering the total cost of removal and replacement, estimated at over $15,000. The threat of foreclosure, buried in the dense legal jargon, was suddenly very real. Liam read the document standing by his kitchen window, watching the sun beat down on his new driveway. The surface was now fully cured and unmistakable. The words of the original notices were not just texture. They were faint, glossy depressions, readable in certain lights, a permanent, grotesque watermark that seemed to shimmer with the sweat of his effort and the arrogance of Vivian's demands. As the legal hammer fell, the social firestorm erupted. Willow Creek used a highly exclusive invite-only community intranet, the Willow List Serve, for all official and unofficial chatter. Vivian Sterling, 11:15 a.m. Neighbors, I must inform you that the resident at 143 Azalea Lane has committed an act of blatant vandalism and mockery against the community's shared standards. This individual has utilized trash and recycled debris as a substrate for his driveway paving, creating a health and environmental hazard. Legal action has been initiated. Rest assured, the HOA board is working diligently to remove this blight and ensure the perpetrator is held fully accountable for the financial and aesthetic damage. The initial responses were a flurry of outrage from the Sterling loyalists. Chloe, 121. Unbelievable. This is exactly what happens when we let in outsiders with no respect for property values. Fine him until he moves out. Dr. Richardson. I saw it this morning. It looks cheap and tacky. It needs to be removed immediately before it contaminates the groundwater. Mr. O'Connell is clearly disturbed, but then the quiet, suppressed resentment of the community began to bubble up. These were the residents who had been fined for the wrong shade of white paint, or for letting their mailbox weather too much. Garden Granny, 1:45 p.m. I am told the trash is the HOA's own correspondence, sealed in tar. Can anyone confirm this? If true, it's arguably the most artistic compliance I've ever witnessed. Anon B. I've been fined $300 for letting my oak tree drop leaves in November. Perhaps Mr. O'Connell has a point. The covenant only specifies the top layer. Where does it say the sub-base can't be high-quality paper? The listserv devolved into a genuine social war, splitting the neighborhood into two distinct camps, the Sterling Guard and the Quiet Rebels. Liam's driveway had become a symbol, a battlefield marker in the ongoing war between petty rules and personal freedom. Liam knew he couldn't fight Blackwood and Finch alone. He called in a favor from an old college acquaintance, Marcus Mac Allen, a sharp-witted young attorney specializing in property rights and environmental law, known for his love of a legally absurd fight. Mac, a man who wore expensive sneakers with custom-tailored suits, drove out to Willow Creek that afternoon. He didn't park on Liam's driveway. He stopped his car on the public street, walked onto the pavement, and immediately knelt down, running his hand over the embossed surface. "It's beautiful." "Liam," Mac declared, straightening up with a wolfish grin. "Seriously, the ghost of second and formal notice of violation is perfectly visible here in the low light. This isn't vandalism. It's a structural art installation. They're threatening to bankrupt me." "Mac, they want $7,500 in 48 hours. Or they slap a lien on the house," Liam said, passing over the legal documents. Mac scanned the injunction request with rapid efficiency, his eyes darting across the legalese. He tapped a finger on the clause detailing the forced remediation. "Okay, Liam, listen up. The beauty of your sheer pettiness is your defense. You complied. They required paved, durable material. This is paved and durable. Their argument hinges on vandalism and disruption of aesthetic harmony, which are subjective and weak. But this is dangerous." Mac pointed to the covenant section defining acceptable sub-base materials. "They say the base must be crushed stone or gravel suitable for load-bearing. While paper and tar are strong, they're going to argue they degrade, which violates durability." "The paper is high rag content, Mac. It's like a fibrous membrane soaked in bitumen. It's stronger than the cheap crushed aggregate they would have used," Liam argued, feeling a surge of nervous energy. "Doesn't matter. They want to scare you into ripping it out so they can save face. We can't just defend. We have to counterpunch," Mac decided, pacing. "We file for a declaratory judgment. We ask the court to officially rule on two things. One, that the current driveway is compliant with 3.4b as a paved, durable material. Two, that the HOA's arbitrary and targeted fines constitute harassment and malicious prosecution designed to suppress personal property rights. That stops the foreclosure threat cold until a judge rules." Liam felt a fresh wave of hope mixed with dread. "A lawsuit? That could take months. They'll bleed me dry with legal fees." "They're bluffing on the fees, and we're going to force their hand," Mac said, his eyes now glittering with genuine strategic excitement. "We're not fighting the HOA. We're fighting Vivian Sterling. And to beat a dictator, you have to expose their pettiness to the world." Later that evening, an unmarked sedan with two men in suits, private investigators hired by Vivian to document the vandalism, parked across the street, zooming in on the now famous embossed letters. Liam watched them from his window, recognizing the escalation. This was no longer a dispute. It was an active, documented surveillance campaign. He stepped outside, grabbed his largest, heaviest watering can, and walked to the driveway. He poured a stream of water over the embossed section. The water pooled, highlighting the depressions where the ink had been heaviest, making the ghostly text stand out clearly, an unmistakable legal document preserved in stone and tar. Just as the private investigators were snapping the final, incriminating photos, a battered sedan, not a Willow Creek car, pulled up slowly at the curb. A young woman with a camera and a microphone attached to a boom pole stepped out. She pointed the microphone toward Liam. "Mr. O'Connell? I'm Sarah from the Low Country Ledger blog. We've been tracking the HOA drama, and we heard you might have paved your driveway with a rather unique base layer. Is it true you used the actual violation letters?" Liam looked at the reporter, then at the two suited men furiously trying to cover their cameras, and finally at the dark, defiant surface under his feet, which bore the permanent impression of a legal threat. He knew this was the point of no return. His private act of revenge was about to be national news, guaranteeing Vivian's public humiliation, but also ensuring her retaliation would be swift, total and without mercy. The low, rumbling whir of a drone was the new normal over Willow Creek. The Low Country Ledger piece went live at 6 a.m., titled Paved with Malice. Homeowner Cements HOA Tyranny in Driveway Vengeance. By noon, the story, complete with close-up photos of the faintly embossed, formal notice letters preserved in black asphalt, had been picked up by a national news aggregator, the comments section becoming a furious digital bonfire. Liam, the quiet craftsman who wanted nothing more than his peaceful, moss-covered sanctuary, was now a meme, a folk hero of property rights and anti-authoritarian defiance. The scrutiny was instant, brutal, and entirely focused on Vivian Sterling. Her name, image, and the HOA's draconian covenants were splashed across social media. The Willow Creek listserv, already fractured, shattered under the public glare. The quiet rebels, emboldened by anonymity and external validation, began openly demanding a special emergency meeting to vote on Vivian's immediate removal from the board. "Vivian, you have brought national ridicule upon Willow Creek," thundered Harold Jenkins, the HOA treasurer and a longtime member of the Sterling Guard, in an emergency phone call. "The property values are already suffering a PR hit. You need to rescind these ridiculous fines and agree to mediation." "Mediation?" Vivian hissed, pacing her immaculate marble-floored office. Her face was tight, the silver hair looking brittle under the harsh light. "He filed a declaratory judgment, Harold. He is suing the association. He is using my own letters to mock me, and you suggest I mediate? He violated the spirit of the covenant in the most malicious way possible. And I will not allow a man who smells of turpentine and disrespect to destroy the order I've spent 20 years building. Your order is turning into a circus. There are people parked outside his house right now taking selfies with the driveway." Harold's voice was strained. "Blackwood and Finch are advising us to settle." "Then fire Blackwood and Finch," Vivian snapped, cutting the call without ceremony. Her retaliation had to be swift, decisive, and personal. The driveway was a lost cause. Legally, Liam was technically compliant, and Mac's motion for a declaratory judgment was precisely aimed at proving the fines were levied in bad faith. The battleground had to shift. Liam was fighting for his sovereignty. Vivian knew she had to hit his core, his attachment to the land itself. That evening, Mac and Liam reviewed their final court filings for the injunction hearing scheduled for Friday. "We've got them." "Liam," Mac declared, closing his laptop. "The paper trail, no pun intended, shows a clear pattern of targeted harassment. We proved the driveway is durable, and we exposed the malicious intent behind the high $7,500 fine structure. No judge will uphold this. They'll be forced to back off and drop the lien threat." "So, no forced remediation?" Liam asked, feeling the first genuine sense of relief in days. No forced remediation. "And you get to keep your monument to bureaucracy. You're going to be famous, man. People are calling it the paved truth." Mac grinned. Their victory felt imminent, but Liam's gut tightened. He looked out at his 5 acres of wild, untouched forest, his sanctuary. Vivian Sterling hadn't achieved her level of control by accepting defeat. He had won the battle of the front yard, but he sensed the war was far from over. He voiced his fear to Mac. "This isn't just about a driveway to her. It's personal. She wanted that house vacant, sanitized. She wanted my property to be a mirror of the rest of the neighborhood. She won't stop at a fine. Legally, she can't touch the house or the woods unless there's a direct covenant violation," Mac countered, though his expression was serious. "Check the covenants again, Mac. Everything. What did I miss? Where's the next landmine?" Mac pulled up the bulky electronic copy of the Willow Creek Covenants, scrolling through sections on pool fences, satellite dishes, and pet waste. Then he stopped, his scrolling thumb freezing on a single clause tucked away under the landscaping section. Covenant 9.1D. Native habitat preservation and invasive species control. "Oh, damn it, Liam," Mac breathed, his voice flat. "This is a doozy. It says all property owners must actively remove and prevent the spread of non-native and highly invasive plant species, specifically citing kudzu, Chinese wisteria, and Japanese honeysuckle." Liam felt a chill despite the humidity. His 5 acres of woodland were beautiful, but they were old, and like most of the South, they were riddled with the fragrant, beautiful, yet aggressively invasive Japanese honeysuckle. It grew everywhere, intertwined with the native trees, impossible to fully eradicate without bulldozing the entire parcel. I've lived here 6 months. It's been there forever. Nobody's ever been fined for that, Liam said, trying to rationalize. Nobody's been fined because it's a subjective, rarely enforced rule. But it's a mandatory rule, Max stressed. And the enforcement section is brutal. Failure to present an approved remediation? Plan within 5 business days of formal notice grants. The ARB, the right to contract removal services at the homeowners. Expense to prevent the contamination of surrounding properties. As if summoned by the reading of the Dark Prophecy, a silver-blue HOA maintenance van, one Liam had never seen before, slowly drove past his property line. 2 men in official-looking vests were videotaping the dense, vine-covered edges of his woods. Liam realized what was happening. The driveway was a symbolic victory, but the woods were his heart, his sanctuary, and his livelihood, as he used the reclaimed wood for his custom furniture. Vivian wasn't going to let him keep his home. She was planning a full-scale, devastating invasion. The legal demand arrived that afternoon, delivered by the same stoic courier. It was printed on the same thick, cream-colored paper. Urgent and final notice of violation, native habitat compliance. File WC 143B. The letter detailed an immediate fine of $5,000 for the presence of honeysuckle. It demanded a full, board-approved remediation plan, including the use of heavy chemical sprays or clear-cutting within 5 days. It was signed not by Vivian Sterling, but by the HOA board, granting her executive authority to proceed. Vivian Sterling had lost the battle for the driveway, but she had just escalated the war to a terrifying new level. She was going to clear-cut Liam's 5 acres, destroying his property, his privacy, and his livelihood, all under the guise of ecological compliance. The 5-day deadline to submit a board-approved remediation plan for the Japanese honeysuckle was set to expire at 5 p.m. on Friday. The injunction hearing for the driveway fines was scheduled for 9 a.m. the same day. Vivian Sterling, sensing the legal tide turning against her on the driveway issue, decided to execute her land invasion immediately upon the deadline's expiration, guaranteeing Liam's total capitulation before the court could even weigh in on her maliciousness. Mac, Liam's attorney, had secured a temporary restraining order hearing for the honeysuckle violation for Monday, but that was 3 days too late. If the heavy equipment moved in on Friday evening, Liam's woods, the heart of his property and his craft, would be gone by Saturday. We have to anticipate her, Mac argued late Thursday night in Liam's workshop, the scent of fresh-cut cedar mixing with the acrid smell of legal desperation. She won't wait for the court. She wants to present the judge with a fait accompli. The woods are cleared, the problem is solved, and Liam is stuck with a $20,000 bill. We need an immediate, undeniable counter-violation that shifts the legal and physical focus off your property. Liam had been staring at the Covenant 9.1D text for hours, the words blurring into the faint embossed patterns of the paving paper outside, specifically citing kudzu, Chinese wisteria, and Japanese honeysuckle. He suddenly slammed his hand down on the table, making the legal papers jump. The wisteria. Mac, think about the entrance. The main gate! Mac looked puzzled. The gate? What about it? Vivian's house, it's the first one in, right next to the massive brick-and-iron Willow Creek gate structure. That structure isn't just brick. It's covered. It's been covered for years with that beautiful purple flowering vine she always brags about. She told me once it was the community's signature feature. Liam's voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. Mac, that signature feature? That's Chinese wisteria! A slow, terrifying grin spread across Mac's face as he scrambled to pull up Covenant 9.1D again. Chinese wisteria was listed explicitly as a non-native and highly invasive plant species. Furthermore, the main entrance structure stood on common area property, meaning the HOA board, Vivian Sterling, was directly and primarily responsible for its eradication. This is beautiful, Mac whispered, already typing. She signed the executive order to violate your land, citing this exact clause. Now we use the same clause against her, but the violation is on property she is personally liable for maintaining as the board president. And it's a permanent fixture. A massive, flowering violation. They worked through the night, not just filing a counter-complaint against the HOA for the gate structure, but preparing a motion for judicial estoppel, a legal maneuver arguing that the HOA could not enforce the covenant against Liam when they themselves were in egregious, long-standing violation of the exact same clause on common area land. This motion was their nuclear option. Friday, 4:45 p.m. Liam was standing at the edge of his property line, coffee in hand, waiting. The sun was dipping, casting long, dramatic shadows that made the embossed letters on his paved driveway pop with contrast. The drone, still hovering, was now joined by two local news vans parked on the public road, their cameras trained on the quiet woods. Exactly at 4:55 p.m., the invasion began. 3 massive vehicles rounded the bend, a flatbed carrying a heavy-duty brush cutter, an earth mover, and a pickup truck marked with the logo of Sterling's newly hired contractor, Precision Remediation. Vivian Sterling was in the pickup truck's passenger seat. She didn't bother getting out. She simply watched from the truck window, her face triumphant and hard, a silver-haired queen watching her enemy's kingdom fall. She gave a curt nod to the contractor, a burly man named Dale, who then gestured to the brush cutter operator. The roar of the heavy diesel engine filled the humid air, overwhelming the drone's faint buzz. The brush cutter, a machine designed to reduce 5 acres of dense, wild forest to stubble, turned its formidable steel blades toward Liam's property line. Just as the operator reached for the joystick to lower the cutter arm, a black, slick sedan skidded to a stop next to the Precision Remediation truck. McAllen burst out, his suit immaculate, a stack of freshly certified legal documents held aloft. "Stop! Halt all activity immediately!" Mac roared, his voice amplified by the sudden, intense silence as the contractor cut the engine. Vivian Sterling finally emerged from the truck, annoyance etched on her face. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Allen?" "The 5-day remediation deadline has expired. This is private property, and the HOA is executing a court-sanctioned covenant right." "No. Mrs. Sterling, the deadline has expired, but the court hearing on this precise covenant has not," Mac countered, handing the contractor a thick packet stamped with the court seal. "This is a simultaneous motion for judicial estoppel and a formal complaint of extreme violation against the common area property. Specifically, the main gate structure." Mac turned and pointed directly at the massive brick Willow Creek entrance less than 50 yards away, which was entirely engulfed in a cascade of beautiful purple blooms. Mrs. Sterling, as you know, Covenant 9.1d, mandates the immediate removal and prevention of Chinese wisteria on all property, including common area, Mac announced, his voice carrying clearly to the news cameras now rushing forward. "That structure is a massive multi-ton wisteria plant, a direct and demonstrable violation of the exact same clause you are using to justify the destruction of Mr. O'Connell's home. The wisteria is destroying the structural integrity of the brick and ironwork, constituting a far greater immediate risk to property value than Mr. O'Connell's honeysuckle." Vivian stared at the gate, then back at Mac, then at the news cameras. Her mind scrambled, trying to find a counter. The wisteria had been there for 10 years. It was her favorite. "That is absurd. It's a decorative element." "It's maintained," she stammered, her voice shaking. "It is a highly invasive plant species explicitly named in the covenant, which you are personally responsible for maintaining, and you have failed to do so for over a decade," Mac pressed, pushing the final, devastating piece of paper into the hands of the contractor, Dale. "Mr. Dale, that document is a new, immediately executed work order, filed by 2 other HOA board members, using the exact same punitive clause you were hired under. It grants the contractor the right to contract removal services at the homeowner's expense to prevent the contamination of surrounding properties. The work order was for the immediate, forced remediation and eradication of the Chinese wisteria vine, with the cost, including punitive fines, directed straight at the HOA's Executive Authority Fund, which Vivian controlled. Dale, the contractor, looked from the thick wad of legal papers to the idling brush cutter, to the massive, expensive gate, and then at the frantic, sputtering face of Vivian Sterling. He smelled an enormous, messy liability and immediate physical danger to his equipment. "Wait a minute, ma'am," Dale said, turning to Vivian. "The work order is contradictory. This one says clear-cut the woods. This new one says clear-cut the gate. They both cite 9.1D and grant executive remediation rights. I ain't touching either one until a judge sorts out who owns the liability. We're standing down." Vivian's authority evaporated in that moment. The brush cutter was silent. The media cameras were rolling, capturing her descent from queen to tyrant, caught in her own trap. The next morning, the local headline would read, "HOA President's $10,000 gate is the real invasive threat." Vivian Sterling, outmaneuvered, publicly disgraced, and legally neutralized, finally turned her blazing, defeated gaze upon Liam. He didn't gloat. He simply raised his coffee mug slightly, the last vestige of his rustic peace, in a quiet, cold toast. The final karmic twist came 6 weeks later. The judge, in the declaratory judgment ruling, not only declared Liam's driveway paved, durable material and compliant, but also ruled the HOA's fines arbitrary and capricious, ordering the HOA to pay a portion of Liam's legal fees. Vivian Sterling was officially removed from the board in an emergency vote. Her final humiliation was watching the new HOA-approved contractor arrive at the Willow Creek entrance. The crew didn't come to remove Liam's driveway. They came instead to painstakingly remove the beautiful, aggressive Chinese wisteria vine from the main gate, leaving the HOA's symbol of power naked, exposed, and compliant with the letter of its own tyrannical law. Liam O'Connell, still living peacefully among his woods, could now drive to his home every day, his wheels rolling over the preserved, black-tarred memory of her defeat.